Well, I'm now joined by Dr. Lumkile Mondi, Economist and Senior Lecturer at Wits University, to further expound on what was said by President Cyril Ramaphosa regarding how is it that employment opportunities can be created in South Africa, and how is it that we can perhaps cut the red tape, so as it were, to allow for businesses to flourish. Dr. Lumkile, always a pleasure speaking to you. Quite an interesting State of the Nation address yesterday, obviously focusing on economic recovery and the practical tools that need to be put in place. One such admittance by the President that cannot be ignored is he finally said it, that it is the job of private sector to create jobs, and it's not necessarily the job of government to create jobs as well. But before we go into some of those matters, what say you around your take of the State of the Nation address?
I was very encouraged that the President has really understood the critical nature of giving space where capability lies in the private sector. So it's very exciting for South Africa, and I'm hoping that the necessary removal of all the constraints that have been identified by various research bodies, government itself to the DTI, in many years talked about the macroeconomic reforms which have never happened. Secondly, also, if you look throughout the IMF Article 4 documents that we've seen, with the recent one being published today, they all talk to the removal of those constraints that are in government hands, from transport to various other infrastructure, such as energy, that will unleash quite a lot of possibilities for South Africa. So I'm very encouraged by the President's speech.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking here about encouragement, but once again, he's set up another task team, and one wonders how effective these task teams have been. I mean, if we actually do a review of the President, maybe many would say that President Cyril Ramaphosa is more of a consultative president, as opposed to one that kind of makes decisions very unilaterally, so as it were. We've had various task teams since he came in at the helm in 2018, from looking at advisory panels and councils to identifying interviewing and recommending prospective candidates for the NDPP, to the Economic Advisory Council, Investment Envoys, the SOE Council, the Presidential Infrastructure Commission Council. I mean, as you go through it, there's so many task teams, so many advisory councils for the purpose of being able to achieve some of the jobs and some of the mandates that many would argue that leave to the cabinet ministers as well as the DGs in the various departments. Are these task teams, advisory councils, these panels of discussions actually yielding any tangible results?
Firstly, we have to recognize that this is a president who's not fit for purpose. He's unable to lead the country in a crisis. He had inherited a country that already faced an economy that was crumbling under Zuma mismanagement. And more importantly, he had been leading and part of resolving the energy crisis when he led the task team at ESCOM. So we knew what we're getting into, that, Zuma-led made decisions for better or worse. This one is about him. It's more focused about him. He wants to be popular. I think somehow in his mind, he thinks he's a Mandela, and therefore he would like to be including and having many people participating in discussions than fixing the problems and making those hard decisions. So overall, Faith, to your point, we are in a deep crisis, and we're looking for leaders that can take those hard decisions and move us forward. Committees, when a leader uses committees because an incompetent minister is in the portfolio, doesn't move South Africa forward. So I think we have to put this until 2024. We know that this president will never make any hard decision, and we're going to have to live with for the next 2 years at least, until South Africans take a bolder decision and look for better leadership elsewhere.
Well, Dr. Lumkile, if you're saying that the President will never make any hard decisions, whether it's for the betterment or to the detriment of the country, then who's the President, or what is he representing? Is he representing the Republic of South Africa? Is he the President of the Republic of South Africa? Or is he the President of the African National Congress?
He's been very clear from the first day became a president that he'll be preoccupied with uniting the ANC. And we see that with Ms. Sisulu's letter relating to some of the issues that Ms. Sisulu has with him. And writing through the letters of the tourism department, indicating that she's taking on the president. And we know that nothing has happened as far as that undermining, at least in the eyes of many of us, has been done. So really he's preoccupied with the ANC issues. He's buying time, and buying time at the same time, we know that the house is burning. We have seen, we saw the July uprising, we got the expert report on Monday, and it's telling about his indecisiveness, that when the events were taking place, he should have called the State Security Council and acted. He never acted. This has been followed by fires, destruction of infrastructure. So you get the leader what you deserve. So I think I'm hoping that South Africans are learning rapidly that a lot of our problems are in our hands. Therefore, we need to make the right decision in 2024 and make sure that we choose a leader or leaders that could get this country out of this deep crisis that we're facing. Ramaphosa and the ANC are not going to take us out of it.
You know, as you're speaking about that, one wonders as well, then what effect would be the appointment now of one such as Sipho Nkosi, who's now going to be consolidated within the presidency to head up another team, yet another team that will see into the cutting of this very same red tape to ensure that the entry into business as well as business participation, the environment is actually conducive and is more affordable. Is it going to yield any results? I'm just wondering, just from a layman's perspective, Dr. Lumkile, that if you're going to be taking somebody else as highly accoladed as he is and bring him into the presidency for the purpose of cutting the red tape to allow for businesses to thrive in the country, what is the purpose then of the small business ministry?
Well, in fact, that's the question, that why appoint a minister knowing that she's incompetent? So Sipho brings quite a lot of value, I think, to the president. So we know that the president, unable to make decision about his ministers, he's now consolidating power at the president. So there's a huge shift and centralizing function in the presidency. And where Sipho Nkosi comes in is really the experience. Remember that he's got a huge experience, having led Exxaro for many, many years, delivered value to shareholders of Exxaro, but more recently leading the Small Business Institute, where he's linked to various sake cameras or business chambers across the nation, and therefore being privy to intelligence about the challenges faced by the small businesses, and marrying that experience with his big business experience, I think is going to be extremely valuable for the presidency. And therefore, hopefully, the president will act on that advice, because we know that it is not because of the lack of advice and guidance to the president's ear. It's a president that can make decisions.
Yeah, I mean, and going back to that point, I want to labor it on a little bit, because if Sipho Nkosi, with his experience, extensive experience, even including Sasol, Exxaro, as you were mentioning there, the Chamber of Mines and the like, comes into the presidency for the purpose of being able to create a conducive environment for businesses to thrive, particularly small and medium enterprises, the very same individuals that they have to feed back into is the Ministry of Small Business Development. If there is no alignment and no connection there, it does not matter how many great decisions get taken up at the top level. How is it going to filter down to the ministry? How is it going to filter down to the relevant departments, the DGs, the HODs within those departments? Because then it will be consolidated at the top.
Well, I mean, we know that the president is a man of a wise and good English. So he uses that to try and show South Africans that he's in control, he knows what he's doing. Clearly, the point you're making, Faith, is what we all have experienced, that is creating all these structures, is appointing all these extremely capable people. But really, that does not filter into change, because he simply cannot make those calls which are critical. So it's one of those where you're trying to speak well, you mean well, and we know South Africans that, you know what, we've had this, we've seen it, And simply, we are constitutionally bound that we're constrained about our constitution. And therefore, as I've been saying, that ours is in our hands, as Nelson Mandela said, that we need to do to the ANC what we did to the National Party, because the ANC has simply been dismal. It's focused on its own, it's focused on its cronies, and has neglected the priorities of inclusivity, of making sure that South Africa occupies a bigger space in the international community through innovation, through development, and instead has been preoccupied with saving a political party which in fact is so divided that it will never unite, no matter what miracle people bring to the table.
We're going to leave it there. Dr. Lumkile Mondi, the Economist and Senior Lecturer at Wits University.